And that's actually what the question I was having there was, like, lots of trauma, because Darcia, your work speaks to how when the sort of like neurobiological relational needs of the child are not met as a consequence generally of the parent having not had their needs met, and thus being raised by and then growing into expressing a kind of culture that doesn't meet their own needs nor the needs of their child, that the traumatized child psychologically, neurobiologically has a tendency towards hierarchical tendencies, either seeking dominance or submission as some sort of reaction. And I'm just like wondering about that. Like, these are traumatized people. They're unable to see the sort of, I think there was like, it wasn't not non-hierarchical sort of nature of the Indigenous way, if I'm remembering this correctly from your book. And instead they just saw likely that they needed to dominate, because the fact that the Indigenous people weren't dominating means that they would be submissive, and so they would need to dominate or something. And I'm wondering if you feel like that fits with your model of understanding.
Yeah. So when we can see that when you're nested, when your needs are provided for in early life, you're going to develop a much more flexible intelligence and easy way of living, because you feel at home on the earth. You have so many social skills, micro social skills of getting along with others, because you spent so much time doing that, being carried around by all sorts of people as a baby and playing with different people, and having freedom to explore your local place, your landscape. Whereas a child that's left alone, to sleep alone, trained to not speak up when they have their needs, because that's what they learn. If you leave them to cry and sleep train them as a baby, they learn to shut down, and they don't grow as well. And they're going to be less flexible. If they only have one caregiver, or even just two, they're not learning a whole bunch of different ways to be in relationship. And so they're going to be much more rigid and scripted to get through life. So sleep training, a lot of developmental psychologists recommend that you do things consistently for a baby. Why is that? Well, we know from rat studies that if you let them be able to predict when the shock is going to come to the cage, they do better than if it's random shocks, right? So when you leave babies alone to sleep, if you do it consistently in the same way, that's better than if you're kind of random. But again, it's not optimal, right? You are stressing that child, and you're going to misdevelop the brain in some fashion. Something's not going to develop that our ancestors would have developed in a nested environment.
And so Darcia's, talking about the bottom up of this, which we all know that, everything we need to know we learn in kindergarten, and that early childhood is key to developing our beliefs and our personalities. And Darcia says our partnership is sort of a bottom up and top down one, because how to produce parents who are already messed up and traumatized is obviously an important part of this. And Bruce Lipton's book Biology of Belief gives an example, and it's not a coincidence that Bruce spends every year with me and White Standing Buffalo at a Cree Sundance, because he understands the importance of ceremony as a trance-based medium for learning. And so this idea of epigenetics, this idea of self-hypnosis, if you will, that, like I say, ceremony essentially is a form of that. These traumas, which can be mitigated, and it can happen from the top down, and so that we can make it not occur in the first place from the bottom up.
Right. So top down, meaning that we can help adults heal and dehypnotize from the dominant worldview and restore the kinship worldview. And the bottom up is how the brain and body are constructed. That just happens without our willfulness, without our choice about it as children, right? Happens to us. So this is all intergenerational responsibility to make sure that we are caring for children so that they optimize their capacities rather than getting caught in the trauma-inducing pathway and continuing that.
One of the things, so I'm going to try to formulate it, something I think I understand.